Today we're driving the 2021 Subaru Crosstrek. This is a refreshed model year for the Crosstrek, and Subaru has been very kind and given us more power, 30 more horsepower. We now have the 2.5-liter boxer four-cylinder from the Subaru Legacy in this. It makes 182 horsepower and 176 pound-feet of torque, which is a very welcome addition to the Crosstrek. This was already one of my favorite cars that Subaru makes, and it's only gotten better with this 21 model year. Today we're driving a top-of-the-line limited model. The 2.5-liter is available in the Sport and the limited model, the top two trims. They still offer a manual transmission, but only with the 2-liter. So you only get 152 horsepower with that. However, that is still a very fun car. This limited and the Sport with the 2.5 only come with Subaru's Lineartronic CVT, however. We've got a few changes to this Crosstrek inside and out, but really the engine is the big one, and that's kind of what I want to focus on today and show you guys what it's like on the road. We've got a redesigned front fascia, a new grille, some nice headlights. They've kind of changed around this plastic cladding a little bit. We have 18-inch wheels on this limited model. The other trims have 17s, which are a little bit more off-road friendly. But this is still the Crosstrek that we've grown to know and love, and people love these things. They just buy them like crazy. Subaru kind of experimented with this model back in the day, and it grew into a really big success for them. It's spacious, it's just kind of the right size for, I think, their younger buyers, and it's practical, it's fuel efficient, it kind of does it all. You get 8.7 inches of ground clearance, which is more than some SUVs offer, and you combine that with a short wheelbase, this actually has some pretty good off-road capability. The back seats do look quite nice in this limited trim. Get some contrast orange stitching. Of course, these fold completely flat, which is great for carrying larger cargo. We get a center armrest and cup holder, but otherwise it's pretty Spartan back here. Not even any charge ports for your mobile devices in the back. And I think it looks quite good. They've really settled in on a nice design for this car. Let's show you guys under the hood. This is the engine that they should have put in here from the beginning. It just feels right. It's well tuned. We have a nice naturally aspirated power band. If you've watched some of my previous videos, you'll know that I'm not the biggest fan of Subaru's tuning of their turbocharged engines. And this Crosstrek is actually fantastic. It feels great. We have a pretty familiar interior. A lot of the same switchgear and buttons carried over from the rest of the Subaru lineup. All of the buttons and controls in here are really intuitively laid out. We have a really nice setup for the cruise control and Subaru EyeSight right here. Still have buttons and knobs for the climate control. No massive touchscreen controlling all that stuff. Physical buttons for the heated seats. You have your X mode all-wheel drive, which locks the all-wheel drive system at 50-50 distribution front and rear. We can turn off certain things like stop-start, blind spot monitoring. Nothing in here seems too complicated or busy, and I even like this dual screen layout. You can see some different parameters up here on your info display, so you can see your water and oil temp, your weather, where you are, your music, fuel economy, lots of different parameters. We even get a real handbrake, joy of joys. We have a nice high-resolution reverse camera, moving lines. Yeah, all right, let's take this thing for a drive, and we'll even do a Harman Kardon sound system test at the end of the video. So stay tuned for that if you're interested in it. Upon first impressions, this Crosstrek drives very much like it did before, just with that little extra bit of torque, and you notice it in everyday scenarios. It just feels good. It feels right. It feels about how it should have all this time. We still have a really nice soft ride. The suspension soaks up bumps incredibly well on this car, but it also manages to handle pretty decently too. For the off-road capability that this car has, the driving dynamics are actually very good on-road. There's nothing new about the performance of this CVT. It whirs away like it always has. It puts the power down decently. You even get little paddles where you can shift manually. And it gives you a little bit more engagement, so to speak. But for the most part, you're just going to be driving this in D, and it does an okay job giving you power when you need it. It's relatively responsive. It's not the most inspiring transmission, but at least now with that extra torque, you don't have to listen to it whir away as much, and it's not as stressed as much of the time when you're driving it. Everything else feels very natural in here. This is just an easy and pleasant car to drive. Subaru has done a lot of work to kind of gussy up this interior a little bit and make it look a little bit more upscale. There is a lot going on here in terms of different types of materials and surfaces, but you do definitely feel this car's econo-box roots. And there's nothing really wrong with that, because this is still a reasonably priced vehicle. Maxed out with all the options, this is only about $31,000. And the Limited starts around $27,000, which I think is a pretty good deal. We've got a pretty chilly, wet day today, and these tires seem to be gripping pretty well. They break away progressively. I think for most winter driving, you'd probably want to swing for a set of dedicated winter tires, and you could get through just about anything. And if you're doing some off-roading, I've even seen people put KO2s or a set of all-terrains on these Crosstreks, and they look pretty proper. You will, however, probably want to swing for the underbody protection that Subaru offers as an option from the dealer. And I'm sure there's probably going to be some aftermarket solutions too. Even braking performance is quite good. We have two throttle tuning maps. So there's S-Drive and iDrive. iDrive is just a more linear throttle progression, which I think feels great. S is just a little bit less linear and more sporty, so you get more aggressive throttle and more aggressive acceleration on initial tip-in. Neither really do anything for performance, but you get that extra feel of acceleration in S mode, at least initially. Let's talk a little bit about Subaru EyeSight. This has been kind of a hit or miss with me lately on some Subaru models. I actually really like the system in this Crosstrek. It seems to be tuned a little bit nicer. They've refined it some, and the lane centering works very well. The radar-guided cruise control is very nice to use. It's very progressive. It seems to accelerate reasonably well. It'll bring you all the way to a stop, though you do have to hold the brake to keep the car at a stop. You can skip 5-mile-an-hour increments down here very quickly, or hold the up-down buttons for 1-mile-an-hour changes in speed. You can change your following distance really quickly. All of these buttons are laid out perfectly for quick adjustments, and you can even turn on and off the steering assist with a press of a button right there, just how it should be. You can also quickly disable lane keep assist right up there, which is the first thing I do whenever I get into these cars. Get out of all this traffic here. I will say there is quite a bit of wind noise and road noise on the highway. This is not as quiet of a car as, say, the Mazda CX-30 on the road. You're going to be raising your voice a little bit to talk to passengers. You're going to want to really kind of bump that stereo to drown out some of the road noise. And I'm sure you can hear it coming through these binaural microphones. Speaking of which, let's do a sound system test. We have the premium audio, the Harman Kardon sound system in this Crosstrek, and I think it sounds pretty good. It does follow surprisingly close sometimes. Oh yeah. Alright guys, well those are my first impressions on the 2021 Subaru Crosstrek. There are some really nice high points to this car. You kind of get this feeling that you can go anywhere, do anything in it. You have this off-road capability, but it's not a big heavy SUV. It's incredibly fuel efficient. This gets up to 34 miles to the gallon on the highway and 27 in the city. And it has a pretty big fuel tank. You could probably eke out 500 miles on this thing on a road trip. 16.6 gallon fuel tank, which is pretty impressive for a car this size. The ride quality is awesome. It's easy to use. It has simple ergonomics. It's reasonably priced. You can get into one of these as low as 23 grand or so. I would highly recommend this 2.5 liter in the Sport and Limited trims though. It makes this such a nicer car to drive and live with. You're not using the power all the time, but when you need it, it's very nice because honestly, there aren't a lot of cars left on the road that feel too slow. They all have a pretty adequate level of power. But the Crosstrek with the 2-liter boxer engine was one of the cars that was really close to feeling too slow. And I think the manual transmission helps in the 2-liter to make it feel a little bit more normal. But this 2.5 paired with the CVT is actually a pretty good powertrain. And I think most buyers of the Crosstrek will really enjoy this and not have any issues with it. It's the way it drives. So anyway, guys, that sums up the Crosstrek for me. I think a really solid buy. This isn't maybe as luxurious or as nice to drive as the Mazda CX-30, for example, which is probably my top pick in the segment. But for those who want something just a little bit more rugged and off-road capable, this is a really good option. It's kind of the best option. So anyway, guys, hopefully that gives you some clarity on what it's like to live with the new Subaru Crosstrek with a 2.5 liter. This is kind of a lifestyle car, and it's cool for that reason. And Subaru has, I think they've kind of capitalized on something special here. Thanks for watching, guys. We will see you in the next video, which I think is going to be a Mazda CX-30 versus Crosstrek comparison. That'll be interesting. Stay tuned for that one. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. We'll see you next time. Later, guys.